Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Hillary Stupa. I'm a software developer with Qdabra Software. And for today's webinar, I'm going to be doing a walkthrough with Microsoft PowerApps. I do see a lot of familiar names in the attendees, which is great. Some of you may have attended my webinar. I guess it was last month. I don't know where the time goes, where I had a demo that showed a parent-child relationship. But what I wanted to do this time was just kind of a full walkthrough so that you can see some of the ways that this could be done. But first, we'll go ahead and I want to mention Forms Viewer to you. If you haven't tried Forms Viewer, it is our replacement for InfoPath Form Services. It gives you browser forms, allows you to continue to leverage your investment in InfoPath. It's definitely got better performance than IPFS. We use it for some of our internal forms, and we've got more we're trying to get converted. And there's new features coming all the time. So if you haven't checked out Forms Viewer, give it a try. So this is about the only slide I've got because today is going to mostly be all about demo. Or walkthrough. What we're going to do is generate an app from a single table in a database. If you've tried much with PowerApps at all, you know that when you go to auto-generate an app, you don't have relationships. So you have to kind of build those yourself. So what I want to do is just generate an app from a database table, and then we're going to modify it to support a parent-child relationship. Now, this same technique works from an app generated from other data sources. After my first webinar on Power Apps, I had an email conversation with someone who'd seen the YouTube video who was using pretty much the same techniques I'd used there, but on a SharePoint list. And he had a couple little places where obviously I was just showing a demo app, so it wasn't like it was a complete walkthrough, where he needed some more details on what I'd done. And I sent him some additional information. And I'm pretty sure he's had success so far with getting everything working. One of the things with Power Apps at this point that I've found is there's a lot of ways to solve the same problem. Now, I think we also have had that in InfoPath, where there's a number of different approaches. And over time, working with InfoPath day in and day out, myself, my colleagues, we've come up with some pretty standard ways that we as a team approach things. And that makes it easy when I'm giving my form that I worked on to somebody else to work on, right? If the whole team kind of uses the same approach. And with Power Apps, everything's kind of new enough that I don't really see anything really claiming to be best practices or so forth yet online. There's great documentation. You can leverage that documentation to figure out an approach, but I'm not yet confident that in any place I've determined the best approach. Some of that is just my nature, right? You guys have heard me talk enough times that you know I'm not one to be like, oh, I found the best practice, because I don't have that level of confidence. I'm constantly looking for what's going to be most efficient and trying to improve that efficiency. So at any rate, I'm going to talk through some of the decisions I made and why I made them as we do this walkthrough. But if you see something where you look at it and you're like, well, why didn't you just do this? Or why didn't you just do that? Drop me an email or pop it into the questions. My email address is hillary.stupa@qdabra.com. You just let me know your thoughts, because I feel like there's still so much to learn here. And I feel like it's the sort of thing that the more we collaborate on, the better. Do at the end of the webinar, fill out the survey. What I've got in the survey packet for you is my notes that I'm going to use to help me get through the walkthrough, because it's not like InfoPath where I know it like, my pet, and I can just kind of improvise. I have to kind of have some notes. So you'll get my notes. I'm going to include the demo from a few weeks ago when I did my last webinar, because it's got some things in it that I didn't include in this walkthrough just for reasons of time. And I'll drop any work in progress that we've got, as well as this sad little slideshow that is, just about nothing. So because we're going to go right into this walkthrough. So let me figure out how to find my taskbar. And I was just doing some cleanup in my site. Okay, So here we are. We are going to get this party started. Let me make sure I've got my notes up on my other screen so that I know what I'm doing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to generate a new app from a SQL data connection. Now, I've already got one to the server. Oh, the other thing let's see how confusing I can make it. The other thing I'll include with the webinar packet is the SQL scripts for the tables I'm using. I am using the same tables that I used for my more recent demo, just because kind of the expense report, I think of it as a canonical example because we all know what they are. We all know how they need to work. They have parent-child relationships, so it's always such a good sample. At any rate, I already have a data connection created to this database. We've looked at creating data connections before. It's pretty straightforward. You click new connection, you enter your information. You need a SQL authentication account for this, but make sure you have one created. So what I did to create my parent-child app was I started with the parent table, and then I modified that to add in the logic needed for the child table. So we're just going to hit connect and let it build our app. And this is going to be your standard auto-generated app that has any number of things and features already added for you. One of the nice things about an auto-generated app is you can also use it to help you kind of learn the way things are done. You can do things like click on this button and see what that button does to kind of get a sense of how things should work. Okay, so here's our new app. We can see from the get-go that there's some things that are not super helpful. We're going to go ahead and change this title to whatever we want. We're going to call it report dashboard. This information here, this may not be super useful to me. We've got my email address, my GUID, right, and some other information. So I'm going to go ahead and make this title be my report purpose. And so over here under advanced, you can see right now the text is the manager email. And I'm going to change that to be my report purpose. Now I'm pretty familiar with the data in my database. I know what the fields are in here, but it's nice to have this autocomplete to give me a hand. So now that is the report purpose. I think what I'd like here is the date of the report. This is right now, it's got the manager user ID. Super useful. And so we'll try report date. And the format looks good there. I'm going to jump this up just a little bit so we can all see it, right? This would be better. Format looks good there. I could format it if I wanted to using a formula, but I'm happy with that. And then down here you can see this body one item is still set to report purpose. And for here, I think I'd like the report total. Now, I want to standardize this. You see how nicely this is updating as I type? It's not like I have to preview to see what I'm doing. I think that's magnificent. So I can go ahead and format this. And what I want is I want to use a text formula so that it displays with the $sign. This format, not the text portion, but the format that I'm going to use may be familiar to you from Excel, right? So I'm going to do $sign, pound symbol, comma, pound, 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 dot, 00, right? And I'm pretty sure this is similar to the type of thing you use in Excel when you're setting up like a custom format. So it looks a little familiar, but you can see now it looks, pretty. We've got a good name. We've got these details, and it looks a little nicer. The next thing I want to do is I want to modify this data that's here in the gallery because I want to make sure that it just has my data. Okay, I want this when the user opens it, I want them to see just their reports. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to modify this. I'm going to start with a loading variable to with an OnStart variable to get my user email and my user ID so that I have this information to use throughout the throughout the session, right? Instead of having to go get it every single time. So we'll start with user email. I may not need the user ID. We'll just start with user email. Now, if you haven't done variables before in PowerApps, it's that easy. The first time you write a set statement, then you can use that variable throughout. So we'll do set user email, and the value I want here is from the user function, and I want the email. I want to spell everything right. Okay, now that gives me the user email variable. I've found, and I've read as well, that, let's go ahead and save this, that you have to actually close and reopen PowerApps to get that OnStart variable to populate in the designer. Hopefully that makes sense. And the same thing happens if you change the start screen. Until you close and reopen, that variable isn't going to change to the correct start screen. I'm sorry, that OnStart method won't change to the correct screen until you close and reopen. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. I won't actually demo this because how many times do we really want to close and open this app? But when you've got the designer open, so right now browse screen 1 has the OnStart variable, the OnStart method available to it. But if I were to move a different screen up so that a different screen were the first screen, then I might have to close and reopen the designer in order to have the OnStart action apply correctly. Okay, so it's just something to be aware of. With it's I don't want to call it a flakiness, it's just kind of a quirk of this OnStart action. So just be aware of it when you're messing around with stuff. If you change this OnStart action, or if you change your start screen, save and close your app and reopen it if you have anything that's acting in an unanticipated fashion. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of this to determine what shows up here in our browse gallery. And look, wasn't this sweet the way it made everything tiny again so we can't see it? Okay, so over here in our browse gallery, under advanced, here is our current items. I'm going to make this bigger so we can see it. So the first thing I want to point out is that we've got a sort here, and then we've got a search here, and that we're going to fix up some of that, okay? And then the next thing is we need to add a filter in order to get the right items. So our items are right here inside this search. And this is what we need to change, is inside the search. Let me just double check my notes. Okay. So we're going to filter these to make sure that we get the right item, and we're going to not need the search feature anymore. You like the way I'm so confident. We're not going to need search anymore because we're going to change this to use a starts with, because I just want to search based on report purpose. So what we'll do here is, instead of search, we're going to go ahead and use filter. And for our filter, let's clear out all of this. You guys have to be patient with me here for just a second. Okay, so for our filter, we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to kill some of this stuff for right now. Okay, so for our filter, we want to filter expense report. We want to base it on submitted by email is equal to our new variable, which is user email. Okay, if we want to filter on multiple logical conditions, you just add a comma and you can add another logical test. So you see up there in the helper text where it's like filter, source, logical test, comma, logical test. So we can go ahead and we can enter some more logical tests here. And what I decided to do here was go ahead and just add the search to my filters, just to pull back what I need here. And you could also combine search with filter. but in this case, this is what I decided to do. This is what I was talking about. There's, a number of ways to do things. Okay, so starts with, and this is going to be, I'm going to change this search text to base on report purpose. So purpose, because all of these belong to me. So the manager isn't going to change, the email stuff isn't going to change. So if I'm just looking at my own stuff, it seems like the report purpose is the thing I'd want to search on. I may also want to find a way to search on date, but for right now, this is what I'm going with. So I'm saying right here in my filter, I want the expense report things where submitted by email equals the user email, and the report purpose starts with the same text in the search box. And then I've got this sort on the outside. So I need to finish this. So the sort is our source. So we've determined our source is this filtered data set. Does that make sense? So we're saying, okay, on the outside of this formula, this filter that I just created, we have a sort by columns. I'm using my hands as I talk because I'm sure this is super helpful for you. And so I was saying this filter here is the source. And now I have to determine what we're going to sort by. Look, the only thing that makes sense to me is report date. So this is how the sort by columns works. We could have seen that in our original formula before I went and deleted all of that. And it's just passing in the column name. It's not like when we enter report purpose up here. This is when we're dealing with the actual data. Down here, we're saying, here's the column name. And then now I'm going to add an if statement because there's a widget up there for picking whether you want things ascending or descending. Okay, so my if statement is if sort descending, and this sort descending one and all of these things, this is just stuff that was included when we auto-generated the app. The naming, I don't know what to tell you guys. It's a struggle because if I were to take the time to go through and rename every single thing that was created for me automatically, that would take a lot of time. We're obviously not going to do it right now. But in terms of like longer term usage, I mean, it would just make sense to me that I would at least rename Browse Gallery 1 to expenses or something like that. So I think you really are going to have to take into account what your needs are. As you're working with formulas, what are the things you're going to need to use in your formula? And it was just something I wanted to mention because I think it matters. I think naming matters. And especially it matters if you're going to put this away after you get it done and users are going to use it and then you're going to come back to it in 6 months. Remember those rules in our first InfoPath forms where we had stuff named field 1 and you had to go try to figure out what this rule on field 1 was doing to field 2 and what field 2 was? Terrible, terrible stuff. Okay, so our browse screen, we just kind of did a little cleanup there so things are the way we want it. Now we're going to add our children, and first we're going to clean this up because this is a nightmare. So we're going to change the title, and we're just going to call it report. Okay, good enough. I hope you guys noticed over in the browse screen that things were changing as we were changing things. This is something that I really value with PowerApps is I don't have to preview it to see things happen, okay? Now, I want to get rid of a few things, maybe. Let's just go ahead and, for right now, I tend to make stuff not visible instead of removing it because I'm not sure if I'm going to need it. So a lot of times I'll just make stuff not visible while I'm first working. Report date. Well, we don't want this. Where's visible? I like this. I like that it's moving me every single time. Okay, and let's be lazy here. Submitted by, I already know it was submitted by me. And let's just, have to excuse my neighbor's dogs if you can hear them because they are unhappy because there is a squirrel at the squirrel feeder on the side of my house. So even when I close the windows, I sometimes get to hear from them. Okay, so here's some basic stuff that is probably of interest to me, whether or not it was approved yet. So the approved date, the report purpose, and the date I submitted it. and maybe care about that stuff. So now we're going to get a child relationship going here. Okay, so now here's the part where things get interesting. We're going to insert a new gallery, and I'm going to make it a blank vertical gallery. It's going to helpfully put it not in the blank space for me, but kind of up towards the top here. And so I can move that down. Let me just see if I can get a hold of this to move it down. And sorry about the wiggling here. Let's make this smaller, just long enough to get that gallery moved. I do a lot of making things bigger and smaller just to kind of keep track of what I'm doing. All right, so now we've got our gallery. We are gonna take the time to rename this, and we're gonna call it detail items. Okay. Now we've got to get data for this. Right now it's set to use sample data. We're going to have to add a data source because right now our only data source is our expense report. Okay, so let's add a new table. We're going to say not a new connection. We've already got a connection for this. Let's just, sometimes scrolling is not my friend. We'll grab that table. It's in the default data set and it's the expense report item. We're going to hit connect. Okay, so now we've said this is the data we want, and we're going to have to figure out what we want in terms of the items. So under advanced here, we're going to have to filter this. Here's our items, and right now it's just saying expense report item. But we need to make sure we've got a filter on this, because what we actually want is we want the expense report items that belong to this parent. Now, what happens when we select something from the gallery? Then we have a reference back to it. So what we can do here for our detail items, is we can filter using that reference. And once we add some fields on there, we'll be able to see. So we're going to spell everything right today. We're going to say filter, parentheses, expense report item. And what we want here is we want the report ID, which, that's determines our relationship between our parent and our child. Browse Gallery 1, right? So right about here, you can see, gee, it sure would have been nice if I'd renamed Browse Gallery 1, right? And what we want from here is the selected item. You guys, this is like, I think of everything in terms of InfoPath. So I'm like, oh, that's like current, right? This is the same with this item. I think of these things as, oh, that's current. Okay, so here's what we want. We want the stuff from the expense report item where the report ID equals the selected report ID. So back up here in the Browse Gallery, when we click this arrow, we select that item. Right? And look at how nice this is that it pulls me over into this next screen. I can actually use the buttons while I'm designing. I find this extraordinarily useful. Okay, so we'll make this just a hair bigger. And now here we've got our blank gallery, and let's see, we're going to go ahead and put our child data on here. I've got an image, so I'm going to throw an image in here. And then I need probably 3 labels. Let's pop this guy over to the left. And let's pop some labels on here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time making this stuff pretty because I don't want to use up time when we need to also handle some more logic for like saving and deleting, because that seems a little more important. Okay, so we're just going to squinch you, and you can see it defaulted to something that isn't terribly useful, but we'll get these all set up. The moving things around is not my friend today. Make that guy a little smaller. Make this guy a little smaller. Make this guy a little smaller. All right, guys, this is ugly, but you get the gist. And let's just fix these up so they're pointed to the right thing. So label 1 here, let's set this to category. It already is. Label 2, we're going to set this guy to the date of the expense. So we're just going to do date. Why do you think it's wrong? There we go. Like, what are you telling me? This guy we're going to set to amount. I'm not going to format, but you remember from our other screen over in the Browse Gallery that you can use the text function to format that up so it looks pretty. And we're going to set this guy to the receipt URL. So instead of sample image, it's going to be this item, right? And receipt URL. Okay, and we may or may not have a picture for a given. I do have pictures for some of these. Some of them I do have a receipt URL for. My demo from a few weeks ago included logic for using a flow to save these receipts off and capture the receipt URL. Like I said, I'm including that with the webinar package. I don't think we'll have time to add all that today. So I just want to let you know, be sure to check the webinar package for some of that logic. Okay, so at any rate, if we wanted to have a child detail screen, we could add an arrow here, and that would allow the user to have a read screen of the child details. I don't feel like that makes sense right now, because right now we're pretty much showing all we need right here in this little scrollable gallery for the child details. So I don't feel like they need to I don't feel like they need to be able to also go look at those. However, what we do need to do is make sure that when we delete, that we also delete the child items. So here is what was auto-generated for us to delete. It's going to remove the expense report, and if there's no errors, it goes back. Okay, so what we want to do here is we also need to remove our child items. Now we know that we want to remove our child items first, right? Because especially if we've got relationships between our data tables, we have to delete the children before we delete the parent. So you guys are probably used to watching my crazy typing methods for making sure I don't miss things like parentheses and semicolons, and that's why I'm entering all of this, probably what looks backwards to the normal human being. Oh, and in this case, I'm going to use a remove if. Remove if, this means if it exists, it gets removed. And so the collection is going to be the expense report item, and we'll grab that guy. So we're going to remove the expense. Oh, thanks so much for bouncing back on me. Let's go find the delete icon again. Okay, so remove if. And so remove if means if this condition is met, then remove these items. And so it's remove if the report ID equals the selected report ID. So it's again, report ID equals there. Isn't this useful? Okay, so the browse gallery one selected report ID. And that way we're going to get rid of the child items as well. So that's one thing we needed to handle there, so that if we delete, everything goes. The next thing I wanted to handle was not allowing the user to edit if it had been approved, okay? Because obviously you should not be able to edit if it's been approved. So I want to go and select an item that I know has been approved before I add this, because I want you to see how in real time you will be able to see the formatting take effect, okay? Because this, again, to me, how many people are tired of previewing their forms? Maybe nobody else gets tired of this. I personally get exhausted of previewing, and I'm a test everything twice. I'm neurotic, right? I want to make sure it's all working. And so it's been really a relief for me to be working with this and be able to see my changes take effect in real time. So what I want to do here is I want to disable this button if something's been approved. Now you can see this is an approved report. I selected one that had been approved. And so over here in advanced, we got to scrolly until we find disabled. Where are you at? Not visible, not display mode. Oh, here it is. It is under display mode. My bad. I was looking for something that said disabled. So here's the display mode. And you can see already it basically says if you've got edit permission, and that's fine. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add to this. And I kind of bounce back and forth where I add things. We're going to say and, right, logical and, which is two ampersands. And we say and is blank. And we're going to go back to our browse gallery one, selected, approved date. I have a feeling this is giving me my autocomplete down below from where I am. Okay, and let me see. Oh, it doesn't like the logical and. Interesting. I was so sure the last time I did this that it did like logical and. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, and so, wait, I really want that to be a double and. Let me try again. Sorry guys, I just want to check one more thing because I feel like I'm missing something. You know what? I am missing something. I'm putting this in the wrong place. Okay, so if edit permission and my and goes here. There we go. Did you guys see how that disabled now? So now this is disabled because this one has an approved date. Yeah, I just put my I put my formula in the wrong place. It needed to be added to the logical test. So the logical test had been this data source info edit permission, and I needed to add to that logical test, and it's basically not approved. The approved data is blank. Isn't this fun when we all get to learn things together? Okay, so I'm going to hit save because I am, as we've mentioned, neurotic, and that takes care of that. And you could see that got disabled. And we need to do the same thing to this guy. We need to do the same thing to the display mode here. And so we'll just go ahead and I've got this written down, so I'm just going to copy paste it, and I'm going to put it right up in here. So here's our if. It's is blank, not is blank selected, and this. That's all part. So this is all part of the logical test. So my next little bit of logical test needs to go right in here, right? And so this way, you see how my little icon to delete also just got disabled? So now all of a sudden you can't delete or edit something that's been approved. So that takes care of that. And if we click on one of these that hasn't been approved, you can see now they're enabled again. So again, I find this to be extremely refreshing in terms of being able to find out what's going on. And we just had a question as to whether or not I'm recording this. And yes, I'm going to type in the answer. I am recording this. So the recording will also be available because I know it's like, and I keep speeding up because I'm trying to hit everything. But like I said, you'll have my notes, you'll have whatever I can get done here, and we'll be able to hopefully review it at a later date. Okay, so now we are done, I think, with everything we're going to do here. And let's move on to our edit screen. So I'm going to go ahead and you see how this turns into a hand? So I can just click the button and it takes me to the edit screen for this. This is also a mess. I want to warn you right now what I did when I first started looking at this was I actually removed these data cards. So when you go to the form, you can look under data and you can actually have data cards selected or unselected, not recognizing or thinking about the fact that I actually was going to still need the data cards. I just need them to not show. Okay. And so let me go ahead and I've got to get that out of my way. Okay. So we're just going to go ahead and set everything to not visible that we don't need. So approved date, I'm not going to need this, right? Because I'm not the approver. Let's get rid of that. And let's copy that because of lazy. Okay, and submitted date, I'm going to set that automatically so we don't need it to display. Submitted by user ID, right? We're not going to display that because I don't care. I already know. Submitted by email. Report purpose, need that. Report date, need that. I'm going to make the user fill that out. Manager information, don't need. Manager email, don't need. Okay, so I mean, I really don't need much on here for the user to fill out at this point in terms of, what these basic items are. I can't help it. I have to change the title. There we go. There's a little something for it, at least. It's a little better. Okay, so I've got those deselected. So I kind of try to think of these different report cards, these data cards, as being fields in my task pane, right? So these are main data source fields, and I'm just not displaying them on the form, right? So, there's kind of a loose relationship you can create there between this and info path, just in terms of how you're thinking. Okay, so I do need some more stuff. And I know I'm going to need some submitter information, and I know I'm going to need some manager information. I'm going to go ahead and add these back here to my OnStart. And what I want to do first is add a data connection to my Office 365 user profiles. Okay, so I know I've already got that here. Let me go find it. Oh, look, I've got 3 of them. Who knows why? Let's try that one and see if it works for me. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to set some more variables here. I've already got the user email here set. I also want a user ID set. Whoops. User ID is what I'm going to call it. And this is going to use Office 365 users. This is a GUID, okay? Whoop. It's profile, it's me. Whoop. I got to put in my user email. So I'm going to go ahead and use this variable that I've already created, because I created the user email. I'm pointing again to the screen. I hope this helps. I created the user email variable prior to creating this one, so I can use this now. So I'm going to do user email, and then what I want here is the ID. Okay, so now I've got a variable for my user ID. And now I also need to do the same thing to create some variables for my manager's user ID and email. So I'm going to do set. And when you're picking manager, or when you're picking variable names, I've been trying to use stuff that I'm gonna know later on, what it is. And so, this is what I've been doing, is just taking care to use names that make sense to me. It's manager. It's going to be, I'm getting the manager for myself, or for the current user email, and then I want my manager's ID. And that gets me my manager ID. And finally, let's set one more variable. And this is going to be, I'm going to call it manager email 0365. This way I at least know it's from Office 365. I know, that it's not from something else. And so it's Office 365. Users, I don't know where my autocomplete went. Manager, it always makes me nervous when it goes away. User email. And it's going to be, whoops, mail. All right, unless I have some syntax errors here, I would assume that that is going to get those variables for me. I'm sorry about the close and open thing. I really should have done them all at once, and I know I'm running out of time, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and I think, let's refresh our data here. Where is my stuff? Submitted by email is user email. What have I done? Set user email. Sorry guys, my data has disappeared. All right, so here's what we're going to do, is we are going to make a quick decision here to just pull those, since something is not right, because I don't have any data. And it's so much easier to work when you've got data, because then you can see things on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick, I'm not sure what I've got going on here that's awry. We're going to do a quick, one more quick close and open, and then we're just going to move on. Whoops. Well, at least it knows it's a recent file. All right, so maybe I had something awry there with my OnStart variable. I'm not sure, but whatever was going wrong is no longer going wrong. Let me tell you the point of what I was trying to get at. The point of what I was trying to get at was to be able to automatically populate some of this data. And the way to do that is to set the value field. So we know we've got the submitted by email. I'm going to go ahead and populate that here. So in submitted by email data card, this data card value right here is what provides data to the data card. The data card is what provides data to the database. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is down here for my data, I'm going to go ahead and set that to, oops, I've got to unlock it. That's not annoying at all. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to set this instead to my user email variable, because what I want to do is have this automatically populated. Okay, user email. And that takes care of that. And that's what I was basically trying to do also with the manager user ID and the manager email. I've got another copy of this same basic thing that I was working on to get my notes ready. I'll make sure to include that with the webinar packet too. You guys are going to have lots of things you can pick through in various states of disarray, as you can see. But what I think is more important to do is to go ahead and set up the child item edit screen. So we're going to do that now instead of goofing around any further with setting these values. Okay, so we do a new screen. I do a scrollable screen usually because it comes with all of the goodies like the little title header and so on. I've been just deleting the Canvas one that's included with it. And here I'm just going to call this add item. Okay, so this is going to be my add items screen. We're going to go ahead and go up here, and I'm going to toss a form on here. Okay, so we're going to do insert, and I want to insert a form, and it's an edit form. Okay, and so this is what it looks like when it's first added. I'm going to go ahead and get this moved down as soon as I can get the little cross guy. There we go. All right, so here's my add item form. I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bigger. We're going to connect to some data. My data source is going to be expense report items. Okay, so here's my detail screen. Let's see here. Oh, that's right. I changed this. You guys are going to just love me for this. Okay, so one thing that I ran across, so this is one place. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and talk to this, and you guys are just going to have to count on my app that I'm going to send you. One thing that I struggled with this process was, what do I do if somebody's working on a report and they've added child items and then they cancel it? If this form is connected directly to the table, do I submit items and then delete them if somebody cancels them? Or do I continue to, or is there another way to do it? And what I decided to do here was I decided to use a collection. So we're just going to copy this guy. Whoop, copy. I thought for a minute there I deleted him. We're going to paste him over here on our edit screen because we also need this gallery here. And we're just going to rename it. And we're going to move him. I really thought I was going to be able to get farther on this than I'm going to during the time we had available, and I apologize for that. I had thought that we would be able to get so much further. Okay, so here's my expense report items, and this should be similar to this guy. Let's just go ahead and click one of these guys so we get some values here. There we go. Now we've got some values. And so when we go to our edit screen, you can see we still got values. We can add a little arrow to this to toss them over into the next screen, because that's what we're going to do to navigate to our child screen. But for what I want to do is I want to actually, when we go to edit these, I want to create a collection. And the reason I want to do that is so that if I decide not to save things, it's it's easier to do. So what I'm going to do is on the edit form, I'm going to create a collection that has these items, and then I'm going to change this gallery to use that collection. Creating a collection is very easy. You don't have to go to your data sources and add them. You can just simply determine that you're going to create a collection. It's very straightforward. Hey, and we've got somebody who said they're okay with going over, and I can certainly go over, you guys. So maybe that's what we'll do is if you can hang longer with me, hang longer with me, and if you can't, drop out. We'll have a recording of the whole thing. I'll get you materials. So Mark, thank you so much. That's a great idea, and I'll stop like trying to jam in as much as possible in the fastest time possible, and let's go ahead and at least get some of this CRUD relationship working. Create, read, update, delete, right? And so here's what I'm doing. Like I said, I felt like there was a lot of complexity related to child items in terms of what if I save it? What if I don't save it? I could cancel a child item. I could cancel changes to the whole report. I felt like canceling added a lot of complexity if for my edit gallery, I was working directly with the child table. So instead, oh, fantastic. I see there's more people who can hang out longer. So anybody who can hang, do hang, and I'm just going to stop worrying about time. Thank you, guys. I didn't anticipate this was going to take so long to go through. I should have realized it took me a while to kind of develop the notes and everything. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is at this point, when I hit the edit button, I'm going to go create a collection. And I'm going to use this collection. A collection is in-memory data. Okay, I'm going to use this collection for my edit form, and I'm going to use this collection to kind of gather any changes as well as the existing data. And then if the user saves their entire change set to the report, I'll write things back. I'll use a patch function to write things back to the database. So the easiest way to create a collection is just to do it when you need it. You know what? I would like to create my collection before I navigate, right? Order of operation matters. So let's do that. Clear collect means clear this collection and then add items. You can collect, you can clear, and you can clear collect. So in this case, when I go from my detail form of my report into my edit state, I am going to clear collect, empty this collection, and start fresh. Because you know what? When the person's editing the report, they are either going to save their changes or cancel their changes. They only have two states that they can take. Okay, so clear collect gives me a blank, empty collection, and I'm going to call it expense item collection. Okay, and what I'm going to put in it is I'm going to put in the items that I want, and the items that I want are the expense report items, okay, where the report ID is equal to the selected report ID, this guy right there. Okay, so that's what I want in my collection. And then we've got the navigate, we're all good. So that's all we needed there. So now what I've got to do is I've got to change my gallery on my edit items here. I'm going to change that gallery to, instead of using the expense report item, use the collection. Okay, and do you see how that shows up here? Isn't that useful? Right? So now I've got my collection. Now, did you notice how it all went blank? That's because nothing's actually in my collection yet. I created the collection when I added this line, clear collect, expense item collect. That created the collection and allowed me to use it, but it's not populated yet. If I go ahead and click on this guy once I've got the little hand icon so that it actually takes the action that I've indicated in the button, you can see now my collection is populated. Okay, I hope that makes sense. That's something that I have found I've had kind of a steep hill to climb on understanding, is just creating the variable, in this case, just creating the collection isn't populating it. But when I take the actual action, then it gets populated. So now I've got stuff I can see. The other thing I would like here is I'm going to just scooch you down just a little bit because I want to be able to edit an item. or create a new item. So we're going to add controls for creating a new item, but we're also going to go ahead and add an icon here that will take us to our other screen. And let's just populate that. One thing I would like you to understand about forms is that when we're dealing with forms, they have different states. This guy's making me crazy. Got him. Okay. When we're dealing with forms, forms have different states. Okay, so I see there's a question and I'll address that in just a second. So forms have different states. They have the new state and the edit state. That is why when you look at our auto-generated app, what was created automatically, you can see that we weren't given a new screen, right? We've got browse, detail, and edit. And from browse, if you click on new report, it opens up an edit form as a new form. Okay, so that's when it's new. When we go to edit a report and we click on that, you can see it opens up the same form as an edit form. And what I wanted to point out to you on the form itself is this property of item. Okay, so item right here is the record and browse gallery 1 selected. Item property is used when the form is in edit mode, not when it's in new mode. So just kind of keep that in mind. One of the questions I see is that if there's a lot of records, if my child rows are approximately 10,000 records, will the gallery filter work? And I'm not sure of the answer to that. I mean, do you really have a parent that has 10,000 children, or are you saying that the child list has 10,000 records? Because the filter that's being run in the case of this right here, where we're saying filter these based on report ID, selected report ID, this filter is actually querying the SQL database for just those items. Now, I believe if you're working with SharePoint, I think the same thing is going to happen. I think when you add a filter, it's going to query for just those items. I don't believe all the items are returned and then the filter happens on the client side. So I think that's the question. And I'll have to look it up, and I've got your email address, so I'll send you an email later. I'll have to look it up, but I remember seeing before an explanation about filter, and I'm pretty sure in one of my previous demos, when I used a filter that was not going to run on the query, but was instead going to run on the client, that I had a little icon that showed. It wasn't an error. It was like a little blue eye or something like that that let me know there was something that wasn't shall we say, optimized. Okay, so at any rate, that was forms. We talked a little bit briefly about filtering. So what I want to do right here is I want to navigate from here over to my new screen, which I'm going to rename because I can't take it. I can't leave it like this. And we're going to call this edit detail. Okay, so, and in fact, this shouldn't be add item, right? It should probably be like, I don't know, because we're going to go there if we're editing or if we're creating new. So at any rate, we'll leave it as add item for right now. Let's drop on a control here to allow us to add a new item. And we're just going to throw on a label and a plus icon or something like that. Let's go find a plus icon. Great. And that's adequate. And the reason I wanted to get this in place is because, whoops, I see what's going on. Come on. Is because I want to show you about grouping. Let's get this guy moved down. Okay, so here my text is just going to say add item. Okay, and so I'm going to group these two items over here. Oops, control. All right, group. Okay, and the reason I want to group them is because I can add an onSelect to about anything here in PowerApps, okay? And that includes a group. So if I wanted to have like something the user could click to add an item, I can go ahead and just group the things, and then that way they stay together. And I can always make sure that when the user clicks kind of anywhere in this area, the thing's going to happen, okay? So here is my, I'm like all over the place in my notes. If we add an item, we need a new form and we need to go to our edit detail. So I'm just going to rename this detail, okay? And so when we hit this add item, our on select is just going to be a navigate, no big deal, easy peasy. And it's going to be what? New form. Our form is detail. Oh, that was nice that I named it detail, right? That would have been really helpful for me if this was a real app. So glad it's not. And then our next thing is going to be navigate, and we need to navigate to our screen, and our screen is our edit detail screen. And we've got to put in a transition, and we're going to go with none on that, okay? All right, so now we've got an add item that will take us there. And then for this guy, we need to make sure we are going to get to the same form, and we want to make sure that we're going to be able to edit it. So let's see, we're going to go ahead, and from here, it's going to be edit form. And the form we're going to is detail. And we're going to do navigate and whoops, edit detail. And it's going to be screen transition none. Okay, so this gets us our navigation. So, whoops, it would if some of us could type. All right, this gets us our navigation. So now we've got some basic navigation in place. Let's finish setting up our detail form. So over here, we've got our detail form. Let me just make sure I've got this connected correctly. All right, and so in my detail form, just going to pop over here and take a quick look at my notes because now I'm completely lost, which I think is super useful. Okay, so my detail form is connected to expense report item, and I just need to add some data, okay? So we've got these various things. We definitely need to make sure we've got item ID gets auto-populated, okay? We need amount, we need category, we need date. These are things that are going to get populated. We just don't have time to go looking and adding receipts. You guys will have a sample that shows receipts being added. Report ID we need, but we don't want to actually populate the data for. Or I'm sorry, we don't want to actually view. So we'll keep all of these and we'll just go ahead and hide some of them. So item ID over here under advanced. It's really interesting to me, you guys, because things have changed. Things have changed in the past few weeks. Like so stuff changes all the time with PowerApps and with the web designer. And so you've got to be and I'm not. You've got to be really kind of ready to just sort of be like, okay, well, that's different than it used to be. That's different than it used to be. You know, even so much as my auto-generated app has some different names, or just now in another window, my session was about to expire. And instead of what used to happen, which literally a week ago, it was expiring no matter what, now all of a sudden it doesn't, and it gives me a warning and allows me to extend it. So it's just kind of interesting the way things are shifting all the time, and it's fun. I think. I mean, maybe it would be less fun if I was actually having to do anything for real with it, but you know, it's fun for me right now. So okay, so here we are. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Make sure I've got what I'm doing saved. Okay, so the item is only used for an edit. So what we're going to do here is on our form, we're going to make sure that our item is our selected item from our gallery over here. Okay, and that way we know we've got the right thing. And this is this is something we can learn from looking at what was auto-generated. So remember, here's our auto-generated form, and you can see Browse Gallery 1 selected is used as the item. So it makes logical sense that when we create this details screen, when we want to use this item to go look at the detail or edit the detail of it, that this guy would be that gallery, which I think I named it edit detail gallery. Oh, maybe I named it detail items. Isn't this useful? I really should be paying more attention to what I'm naming things. Edit items. Edit items. Okay, that was a good name. I'm going to call it edit items, and it's selected. Okay, so this way our selected edit item shows up here. And you saw, of course, how quickly that modified, how quickly that changed. And you could use something instead of add item up here for the text, you could use a formula like if there was something selected from the data gallery, then say edit item, otherwise use add item. So you can use if statements for that sort of logic. Okay, so now we've got this guy. He needs a couple of buttons. He's going to need a save and a cancel button. Let's just go ahead and you guys are going to have to just forgive me for some of the hideous layout that I've got going on here. All right, so I've got a cancel and accept button from this guy over here, and I'm just going to copy and paste. So lazy. And I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. Okay, so now here we are. We've got cancel. The nice thing about copying and pasting these, the nice thing about copying and pasting these is I can see what was used there. So in this case, when we were canceling on the edit form, it reset the form and then it went back. So most likely what I can do here is I can reset my detail form and I can go back, right? I mean, this is great. And then for this guy, it's sort of like when we copy and paste stuff in InfoPath and then we modify the rules. So this was doing submit form, edit form. Now, what we're going to do is a little bit different because of our whole collection thing, because we're collecting things and then we're submitting them. So what we're going to do is, okay, what we're going to do is we are going to add this to our collection. Okay, remember our form is bound to our table, which is fine, but we're going to go ahead and instead we're going to add this to our collection. We're going to reset the form and then we're going to navigate back to our parent form. So that was interesting. Let's just delete all this. Okay, so we don't want to clear our collection. We clear our collection when it gets created. We're just going to add this to the collection of expense report items. Okay, I'll talk about this a little bit more in just a second. And what we want here is we need this form. So it's detail and it's the updates. Okay, so everything that was entered in our form here is in the updates. And this is our entire record. And then we're going to reset the form so that it's nice and clean. Whoops, I didn't need that variable. So that it's nice and clean and ready to go next time. And then we're going to navigate. Okay, and we're going to go back to edit screen 1. And we're going to do screen transition none. Okay, I think we're almost at the point here where I can at least show this to you guys and you can see things working. Okay, so here we're adding an item, here we're canceling an item. And now if we go back to our main screen here, edit screen, here when we cancel, we're probably just fine, right? Because when we go from detail to edit screen, we're doing clear collect. So our collection gets cleared at that point. But when we save, now we have to do something with our collection. We've collected our child items. Okay, so just to recap, we created a collection for our child items when we went to edit the report. The reason we're creating a collection is because we need to be able to display everything that was currently submitted, as well as any new items that the user might submit. However, we also need, if they cancel, to be able to easily not have those child items cluttering up our database or have to go and do some fancy thing to remove those child items. Okay, so when we submit our edit form now, one of the things we have to do is we have to also submit our child items. We got a couple things we're going to have to take care of here in order to make sure everything works. Okay, so first off, I'm going to pop back over here, and in my child stuff, my child items, let's make sure that my report ID is getting set. So if I have again, there's several scenarios. This could be a new report that I'm adding items to, in which case I will not have a report ID, right? Never been submitted, doesn't have a report ID. Or this could be an existing report and I'm editing an existing child item. Or this could be an existing report and I'm adding new child items. This is where things get complicated, right? So here for the report ID, I want to go ahead and I want to edit this guy. And under our advanced options here for this data card, actually, I don't know if I needed to change that. I think I just need to change the data card value. So we need to make sure we're setting the report ID, okay? And what I think I'm going to do is create a variable for that. And that way, when I browse to work with a report, I'm setting the current report ID, and that way I can just set this to a variable, okay? So from my browse screen, when I go and edit, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to set a new variable and make sure I've got a report ID there. And that lets me know too if I'm working with something new or something existing. So let's do set, and it's current report ID. And I'm going to call this Browse Gallery 1, selected, port ID. Okay, so now I've got a variable for this. And then when I add a new one, let's make sure it's getting cleared. So we'll do set. Okay, that's making me crazy. I'm sorry, I gotta get back here. Current report ID. Let's just set it to 0 because it is a number. Can't set it back to blank. Okay, so now I'm setting my current report ID to 0. So I'm going to use this variable now for the report ID, and then I can leverage that in my logic when I go to submit things. Okay, so here's the data card value. This is the report ID, and we're going to set its value from parent default to this new variable we created. Okay, so now I'm keeping track of this. If it's 0, I know this is a brand new report, it's never been submitted. If it's a number, I know what the parent is for these guys. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm gonna check these questions one more time. Okay, I see there's people having to take off. I get it, thank you. No big deal. We'll have the full recording out for everybody, and I am sorry this is taking so long. I kind of want you guys to see how this works, and it takes time sometimes to do these things. Okay, so now we have a report ID. We're getting things set as needed, and now we need to make sure that when we submit, we are submitting this collection that we've created to our child items table. And we need to make sure that for the new items, if it's a new report and these are items being added to a new report, we need to make sure that that report ID is getting set, right? Because otherwise it's going to fail. It has to have that value. So here we go. This is where we're going to save everything, is right here on the check mark. So instead of just submit form, edit form 1, we have to take care of a few other things. First off, I don't have the submitted date time on the form, and I want to make sure that gets set programmatically here. So we're going to do set, and it's going to be submit date time. Well, let's go find the value. Hang on. Gotta go find the name of the thing. Should have renamed stuff. We want to set this guy. Okay, we're going to set this guy. I think what I need to do is use a variable here. Submit date time. Okay, just one more second while I confuse myself. screen one, there we go. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna set a variable and then we're gonna use that variable for a value here. So let's just do that. Back we go, and here we go. So we'll have one thing we've got to fix up still. So back we go. So it's submit date time now, and that way we've got a variable we can use for that parent. And we're going to submit our form, which is great. We've got that taken care of. And now what I need to do is I need to submit these child items. If these child items have a report ID that's equal to 0, then we know that this report didn't already have an ID and that we need to set the value of these. I'm going to go ahead and just for the benefit of time, I'm going to copy and paste my existing formula over here, and then we'll just fix it up as needed. So here's my formula. What I'm doing is if the count of rows in the expense item collection where the report ID is equal to 0 is more than 0, then I do an update if. And what I do is if the report ID is not empty from my last submit on my edit form, then I set the report ID in the expense item collection to the last submit report ID. Okay, so that is what this business right here is doing. This whole if is related to making sure that I set these child records with the correct parent report ID prior to submitting them. Okay. Then what we're doing is we're using a patch to submit the expense item collection, and then I'm going ahead and clearing it. Now, yes, when I populate it, I'm actually using clear collect, so that should be getting populated. But you know what? Better safe than sorry. Before we test this, I just want to make sure that not null. Okay, so I do have to make sure I'm getting submitted by email set and submitted date set. So I'm creating this variable to set submit date time, and I'm going to go ahead and right here, rather than mess around with another OnStart variable, I'm going to go ahead and set my submitted by email here as well. And so it's going to be set user email. Oh, no, I've already got that. I'm sorry, it's the submitter. It's the user ID I need. User ID, and this is going to be Office 365 users. And I love when it does that. Isn't that great? Every now and again, the thing just goes nuts and goes bopping on over when I don't actually want it to. And I'm like, wait, where was I? All right, I've got to put my closing paren here so it doesn't make me crazy. Okay, and then it's users, Office 365 users dot user dot ID. Okay. And what have I done wrong now? Let me just find it real quick. Sorry, guys, you're so patient. Okay, user profile. That's what I did wrong. Oh, look, and I put a comma in instead of a period. I'm starting to lose my mind. User profile. Okay, so here's what we've got. So now we're setting a field called user ID with the user ID. We're setting submit date time. So let's make sure we're getting those things populated here. This is going to be set to, I've got to unlock it. That's not going to make any of us crazy. This has got to be set to user ID. And then submit date time. I think, okay, set the value on the data card itself. Okay, so for submitted date, what I did is I set the value on the data card itself because you can see it's got these different pieces, and I didn't want to set minute and hour and date. So for here, what I did was I set the data card itself to my variable. And let's go find that data field, submitted date. I think, there it is. It's under the default. So instead of this item submitted date, I'm going to use submit date time. Let's try again. Okay, finally, guys, finally, I think we're at a point where we can run this and at least, kind of check it out. Again, I've got more materials I'll send you, fill out the survey. You can have my notes, which obviously are fantastic, by the way. I've hardly used them. I've just been bouncing all over the place because I guess in the end, my notes didn't make as much sense to me as I thought they would, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. So let's see what we've got going on. So you can see I've got all these really, really great things. We know trip to Kirkland's been approved. And so if we go here, we can't edit or throw this away. If we go back and we select something that hasn't been approved, we can edit, we can delete. This guy doesn't have any items. Let's go deal with something that does have some items. This guy has some items, fantastic. So we're going to edit him. Okay, and we've got our add item button and we've got our little edit buttons here, so we should be able to hopefully change things. We're going to hit add item. We're going to select a date. We're going to enter a category. In my original demo from a few weeks ago, I used a drop-down list that was based on SharePoint data. That'll be included in one of the demos I'll include with this webinar packet. I'll use my usual very helpful information. And we're going to add an amount. I'm going to click on this. Now this should add this to the collection. So you can see when I scroll down, it's here in the collection. So hopefully this kind of clarifies I'm not just being crazy using a collection. The reason I used a collection was because these two items, these first two items, they're in the database already. My third item is not. And if I cancel, I want to make sure that it doesn't go in the database, right? And if I save, I want it to go. So if I cancel here on my report, and I've got things set up incorrectly, so it's going back the wrong way. If I cancel things on my report, I want to make sure that let's change this to navigate to the edit form. I want to make sure that the item doesn't get saved. So navigate, edit, form 1, screen transition none. Okay, so that's one of the reasons I was using a collection, right? Was so that I could make sure I could see what was going on. And I do see, I did see a hand up, but ask a question if you've got one. Let me pop out the question panel again, just in case there's something new there. No, yes. Oh, here we go. If my collection, okay. All right, so I'm gonna get back to questions here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and just see if we can just get through the ridiculous demo thing that I've got going on here. So one more time, let's try and make sure we're getting our data saved. So here we're going back to testing. We canceled that item that we added. So even though my navigation was bad and didn't take me back, that item didn't get added. So if we add an item again, when we save it, 25, okay, test, some amount. $11 is a big popular amount for me. And we click OK, here's our guy, he's there. And if we, what did it do? I was just scrolling. Oh, it's gone crazy. This is not on me, guys. That was just something going nuts. Let me go back up. One more go. I was just scrolling, I swear to you. And look, I had a random weird item got added. We're gonna give this up here soon. So edit, add item. Here's my item. I just want to save this. That's all I want to do. And let's save. I'm not touching anything, no scrolling. You guys know it's there because we already looked. And we're going to click on save so that our thing gets added. I still have something going wrong with my navigation, but let's go look at our stuff and see if our new item is there. So let's one more time and take a look at this. I have something wacky still in my navigation. Okay, so you can see my new items did get added when I submitted. So hooray for us. But I do have something still crazy going on with the navigation. Again, I've got a better copy of this that I worked on before that I'll send you guys. And what the heck, at least it was fun for a giggle. I'm dying to know what I've got going on some of these navigation buttons because I've missed a few steps. Yeah, so that takes me back there. And then if we go here and we look at this guy, what are we doing for navigation here? All right, so I don't have, right? I don't have any navigation here. So it's no wonder that went crazy, right? Because on select, I should probably navigate back to the browse gallery. And this is going back, which it shouldn't be doing, right? So this we would probably want to do navigate, browse gallery or browse screen one. You guys are getting the hang, I'm sure, of what I'm doing wrong. And seeing, you know, the problem, okay, it's not a problem, but the challenge with something this flexible is that there's a lot of moving parts. So anytime you're dealing with something that has a great deal of flexibility, you're dealing with something that leaves you a lot of room to shoot yourself in the foot, right? I've got a lot of places here where I need to add things like navigate and things like that. And when I miss them, then you can see what happens. We end up in these situations where we're a little stuck. But my point, the whole reason I wanted to walk through some of this stuff is my point is just because you can't auto-generate an app that has a parent-child relationship doesn't mean you can't take an auto-generated app, learn from it, and extend it in order to have that parent-child relationship. And while I wish I had provided you that information in kind of a more cohesive fashion than I seem to have managed today with this demo, I certainly hope your takeaway is that, yeah, this can be done. This is definitely doable. I mean, we've been kind of tinkering with this for an hour and 15 minutes or whatever. And within, I think, 3 or 4 hours, I think a person could put together a pretty good little parent-child app. Okay, so that really was the takeaway here. I'm not going to drag us through any more of this. And we'll get to your questions here in just a second. I appreciate your patience. Here's a list of some various formula references and things like that you should definitely check out. And now let's go take a quick look at these questions. And I will type in answers to things. So I'm going to get back to you on this on the filter thing. There is a way to determine whether or not you're filtering on the server or on the client. In terms of collections in general, if your collection has 5 items and you need to remove only 2 items, well, you use remove if. Okay, so we looked at the remove if statement briefly. Remove if will work on a collection. So you've got a collection of records, and your remove if would be, remove if x equals y, email equals abc at xyz.com, right? So you use a remove if to get rid of certain items. Adding attachments and attachment controls, that is an excellent question, and I do not know. I didn't see anything in... Oh, so when you say add an attachment, can you clarify a little what you want to add? Can you just type in another little question to clarify a little what you want to add? I mean, because you can add images. You've got an add picture control. But are you talking about adding like a file? So if you're talking about adding a file, I don't know if there's a way to add a file, but you can definitely add a picture control where they can browse for it. You can also add a camera control so the user can take a photo. Okay, so I hope that sort of answers your question. Again, you guys, fill out the survey. I'm sorry I went so far over. And I appreciate your patience with me as we all kind of work through these things. And I really, again, my intent was to clarify that just because you can't auto-generate an app with parent-child relationships doesn't mean you can't add them. And do take a look at some of the sample apps on PowerApps as well. So if you go to create a new app, let's just do a file, save and close. And just one more time. I know, guys, I've just chewed up so much time here. But if we go to new and you want to start with an app template, go to like phone layout and check out budget tracker. Okay, budget tracker is a great one. It's got receipts. It's got a way to take pictures of receipts. It does save to an Excel spreadsheet, but it gives you some ideas for how to do things. And I think that's what we're all still kind of working with is sort of getting in there and getting a feel for how to do things. So again, thank you all so much for your patience. Fill out the survey. I'll get materials to you. Email me additional questions and let me know what else you need to learn about here. Okay, and we'll keep working on learning more about this ourselves so that we can share information. Have a great day, you guys. Thanks so much.